Hey everyone, so today I'm just gonna. Okay, I'm not gonna do that. So basically, following up from the previous videos, a very short one, very simple one. It's just all about .env. Nothing of serious importance there, um, other than changing. Like the most significant point from that video was about catching or preemptively catching the bug of .env and the env file stuff by moving the import for python.env into the check after the environment variable for dev.env file, which would cause an issue some point in the future during deployment when it's not a dev situation where we're not going to be using that environment variable. Um, Further, and we're not going to be using python.env in a production environment. And so that would lead to the server crashing because the package doesn't exist over there. So that's why you want to move it inside or after you actually fetch and check if the environment variable is there and if we even need to import that package. So that was a very small but important thing to catch in terms of like thinking long term and stuff like that. But this video is going to be hopefully more meaty, maybe not hugely so. So let's just get into it. I'm gonna come over here, and it's looks like there's a shit ton of changes. So I'll talk about the real first change. Real reason why so many things look different is because of, I'm gonna open up my project terminal, this bad boy over here. So essentially, at a certain point while coding this, I somehow fell down another rabbit hole. Slightly AI caused, actually. Let me see if I can find the exact thing that led me down this. Okay, so yeah, here. This, the spacing, so I'm like, how do you do that? Like, is there a shortcut? And then it's like, hey, you can format the document. And this will run the default formatter. And even and the default formatter commonly is black, and black won't align that. It enforces one space, right? So I actually missed this, and I installed black as a dev dependency, and I hit Shift Option F, and it like reformatted my whole page. And I was like, okay, I know it's a formatter. I thought like if I just selected this selection and formatted that, it would just format that, but no, it just formatted the entire file. And I was like, okay. And then I just kind of went into looking about black, and black is essentially, I'm just gonna leave this up. It's essentially an extremely opinionated formatter. There's very few customizations that it allows, and its real goal is to just kind of remove styling from a conversation in PRs, which I think is actually a very important thing because devs can argue about stupid bullshit, like shit that doesn't matter to code, and I wouldn't say argue necessarily. Like there is a point, like getting a consistent style that everyone is on board with is difficult sometimes, and just kind of offloading that decision, like okay, everyone's using black, and that's about it. Like just everyone shut up. We're using black. That's it, right? And so no matter how awkward or weird it is, it was like, oh, okay, that was black, but that's super weird, you know. It is what it is, and that's okay. And also it like pushes you to be nicer in code. So anyway, so I just installed it. I also installed a extension for it, because it was supported by Microsoft. The only non like super formal or official one that I am using is To Do Tree, which like I hope it's safe to use that extension, but that's the only one that I'm using. And you know what, let's just Google that because now I'm nervous. Is To Do Tree extensions. Okay. Dev dot. Comments in VS. Okay, there's an article about it on dev community. I don't even know what dev dot community is. Dumb dev community, vibe coding. Okay, there's a lot of community. Is this a Discord? It feels like a Discord. Okay, anyways. So, I'm really hoping it is safe. I think it is. I think it is. It's like, I mean, it's talking about rip crap. I feel like it's just a simple, like, easy thing that someone built for themselves and was like, oh, I'll just publish this. Or actually, maybe, is there, I don't know. I've heard people making money off of VS Code extensions, but I don't know how. I could be wrong completely. Maybe you cannot. I don't know. Getting back to that. But getting back to the real thing. So I installed it. I installed it as a dev dependency. I had another existential crisis regarding this because there's UV tool, right? So UV tool interface. UV includes dedicated interface for interacting with tools. Tools can be invoked without installation using UV tool run, in which case their dependencies are installed in a temporary virtual environment isolated from the current project. Because it is very common to run tools without installing them, a UVX alias is provided for UV tool run. The two commands are exactly equivalent for brevity. The documentation will mostly refer to UVX instead of UV tool run. Tools can also be installed with UV tool install, in which case the executables are available on the path. An isolated virtual environment is still used but is not removed when the command completes. In most cases, executing the tool with UVX is most appropriate, blah, blah, blah. Tool environments. Running tool with UVX. Virtual environment is stored in the UV cache directory and is treated as disposable. Tool versions, you can check out. So UVX is equivalent to UV tool run. I did not know that. That's why you need UV for like one-off things. So rough I believe is a linter, right? Yeah, it's a linter and it's a linter and a code formatter. Oops. Maybe I'll get rid of Pylance and Flake8 and all that jazz. Oh, drop in parity with Flake8, ISort, and Black. Rough VS Code extension. If this exists, I'm absolutely getting rid of Flake8 and Black. No way, and it's by Astral directly. Oh shit. Okay, wow, I'm getting rid of Flake8 and I'm gonna add a to-do for this. So that's another thing. I've added a bunch of to-dos. Where should I add this to-do? Just gonna add it here. I'm pretty sure I can add comments in a by project Thomas file. To-do. Can you add comments to project.toml files? Okay, so apparently works. So I'm gonna just do that here. To do, hope actually works. I hope it does. Um, so otherwise it'll fuck up my thing. Uninstall black and flake8. Replace with rough. So I'm all in on UV and Astral. Because I mean, I heard, I'm like, oh, rough is a high level. Because I remember when I was looking up UV stuff, I'm like, oh, they also make rough. It's a linter in a format. I'm like, all right, cool. No, I don't really care about that. And now I'm like, oh my God, I really care about linting and formatting, actually. Because those are like the main things I use. The only thing is Pylance. Pylance is language server, right? Language support. I'm just gonna look up Pylance. Is it a project? Oh, okay, it is. It is. What is Pyrite? Okay, I'm not gonna worry about this thing because the reason I'm looking at this up, I'm like, I hope this isn't polluting my environment somehow. But I don't think so because it's not my UV log. Everything runs from UV, and I'm still getting my like language support. So wherever Pyrite is installed, is it even? Oh, I wonder, is it even a Pyrite? Is it even? Is it like a Python thing? Oh yeah, it's mostly Python, some TypeScript as well. Um, Rather than Pyrite, Pylance incorporates Pyrite type checker but features additional such as semantic token highlighting and symbol indexing. You can install the latest public version of Pylance. Community maintained Python package by the name of Pyrite is available on PyPy and Conda Forge. This package will automatically install a node which Pyrite requires and keep Pyrite up to date. Okay, yeah. Okay, so I'm just gonna presume it's not polluting my environment. That also makes sense. I'm just going in random directions. This isn't even close to what I wanted to be talking about, but yeah, let me make sure I have that to do. Yeah, uninstall Black and flake8, replace with rough. Yeah, that's including VS Code extension. I'm just gonna add that as well. So yeah, basically Black is the main thing that I installed, and I'm going to soon replace with rough, because it does really take out the conversation of style. Style just is no longer a conversation, which is very good. Honestly, it's really good. You'll still have some small things like, for example, here I'm like, where is it? This thing, because Black enforces that there be a space between an import and something being called, which is very irritating because this doesn't need to be like this. It's super irritating, but we're just gonna be like, Black did it, fuck it, we don't care. I wonder if I type a comment and then actually, no, I'm not going to do that right now because I have some code that is not formatted that I actually wrote, and I want to format it only after I showcase it to you guys. So I'm just going to go top to bottom everything I did, and even talk about my to-dos and explain why I've planned to do them. I don't know if I'm gonna do them right away, but I will definitely get to them because there will be significant things that will matter later on. So like I guess on a day when I'm not feeling all that great or whatever, I'll do it. So we have from math import INF and from bisect import bisect left. So well, you guys know what an import is, so it's nothing important. Um, this is just me importing status. This has changed for a weird reason, so I'll tell you why this line has changed. So basically in black, and I hope it's the same in Rust, or I guess it is. Um, in Rough, sorry, not Rust. The trailing comma essentially tells the formatter, black in this instance, that hey, I don't want you to collapse this into a single line. So what that means is from FastAPI import FastAPI request response status, that technically fits in within the formatter specifications, um, which is less than 88 lines, which is technically not PEP 8 compliant, but it's the only thing that it's not PEP 8 compliant with. Everything else is perfectly PEP 8 compliant, except for instead of PEP 8 says 79 characters per line, this says 88, essentially. That's really the only difference. So, oh yeah, I forgot I was about to talk about that existential crisis I was having. Let me finish this and then I'll talk about that. So here, essentially, with that trailing comma, I'm telling black to not condense it into one line, even if it fits within 88 characters, because that's what black tries to do. It's like, if it can fit within 88 characters, I'm just going to do that, right? But the trailing comma says to black, and it's one of the few things you can sort of customize with black, is if it says that, it won't collapse it into one line, even if it can fit. And the reason for that is basically there's many situations, and this is why I personally was thinking about this the other day myself, was like, you know what, I'm always, if I ever have like a dictionary like here, I'm just always going to leave the trailing comma in case like a dev wants to come in and keep adding stuff, especially with these, because they grow, and sometimes they shrink, but they grow usually, and this and that, and so you just want to keep adding to it, right? So just leave it uncollapsed as you plan to add to it. And the trailing comma is doubly nice for that, because not only does it tell black, it also means like if I just start typing, adding some key values, I mean, it's giving me red right now because, let's do that, right? But if I remove that comma, it's like, and it's just like a small thing, but like allow devs to get into flow state as quick as possible, you know? That should be the design of, that should be, I think, in most cases, the primary goal, primary indicator of well-written code. Sometimes optimizations are necessary, but mostly you should try for code that it's like readable, but also like easy to start working with, right? If it's extremely readable and opinionated to the point where it's a little difficult to start working with it because it enforces upon you like very significant style constraints that you have to manage and things like that, then it becomes a bit difficult. And that's why black is nice, is because you don't have to worry about the style constraints, at least not while writing the code. Just write the code however you like to look at it, and then let black fuck up your beautiful code and be like, okay, no one's gonna say anything about how my code looks and how it reads, etc., etc. This is just what black says, and we're gonna go with it. And I honestly like, I feel like it's nice and spaced out for the most part. There's a couple of weird things, but it's nice and spaced out. So that's why this line shows a change, because I put that comma. I'm going to get into these to-dos, but first I'm going to get into my existential crisis. So, the exploration of which we figured out about Rust. So, or Rough. Essentially, if you do this, you can like UV tool install and just have everything there. The thing with this versus just like having it be a dev dependency is that and I genuinely grappled with this, is like if I have UV and as I tell someone like install use UV tool install and just have the tool ready, and then you come here and then in the rough extension go ahead and configure the path, right? This just extra bullshit step to get to actually working, right? And rough, I bet, and I bet the same with flake and black, I highly doubt it's gonna need some sort of complicated packages and cause dependency resolution issues later on, right? Like I deeply doubt that, especially because this particular project is not going to be, we're not doing like TensorFlow, PyTorch, no super complicated package installs. I think FastAPI itself is going to be the most complicated package install probably in this entire project, right? So I just decided to go with the dev dependency method because someone can just clone this repo, UV sync, and just get going, right? If they're using VS Code, just do this UV sync, and then your extensions are already configured and working. It's all going, just go, 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 go. It's totally fine, right? I'm gonna add another to-do, motherfucker, because I just thought of something. Basically, I don't know for a fact whether VS Code will read the path variable if I just install it as a UV tool install. Explore if rough is picked up by VS Code extension, even if not installed in repo venv, repo venv, project venv. Just gonna make it explicit that I'm talking about UV tool install. So these are my, I keep adding to-dos, and I in some places I've written in my Trello and stuff, and now I'm feeling like, okay, as I'm thinking about code, I should just add it in the code directly, especially in places where it's relevant, just so that, you know, with handy dandy to-do tree, I can come back to it and like look it up and fix it whenever I want, right? And just remember that it's there. That's important. So that's not something. So I might still go down the UV tool route because, like I said, I was having that existential crisis. Man, I keep having these and like talking about them on this thing, and then I just think of a solution. The same thing happened with the .env and the env file stuff. Boy, now to talk about some other existential crises I have to which gets to my to-do lists. So essentially, when, like earlier today, just as I was or soon after making the previous video, because just before that video I renamed this, I was just like thinking about it. Oh, it's turned all my single quotes into double quotes, hasn't it? Oh yeah, Black has turned everything into double quotes. God damn it, Black, fuck you. I love my single quotes. Who the fuck does Black think he is? That's such a fucked up thing. Why is the code formatter called Black? It makes me sound so racist. This is BS. And I'm having a lot of fun on this video. I don't know why. Okay, so to-dos. So I'm just going to explain both of these together. Add the mechanism for reading all environment variables and crashing out if not set. Add mechanism for type casting relevant vars and exit if type error. Should also add typecasting / validating if exception. I'm just going to make that a little bit more generic to do. Essentially, as I was thinking about dev env file, and I'm like, I'm just gonna have this one environment variable that it's okay to exclude, and everything else, if it's not set, we just kill the app, right? Because that just it sounds like a little bullshit, but it forces every developer to actually confront the config and get where everything is used. Um, and also, like, on deployments, right, it enforces that people set each environment variable individually, which is nice because as your deployment environments multiply, it's going to get more complicated to deal with, like, because it's going to start with dev env file, and then I was thinking, oh, I can do dev env file, and I can have dev mode to pick up the logging config, which I don't know if I'm even going to stick with the YAML in the long run. I might just ditch it and go full environment variables and just load them in through .env files, at least here, and then in the dev environment configure them individually or something like that. I was just like, okay, if I'm already thinking two just on my own while doing this, I'm sure there's going to be many others, like, okay, exception this, exception that. And I feel like, let's keep it simple and just have no exceptions. All environment variables that you define are always declared, or they're just deleted and removed, or we just don't even worry about it, right? If it's not going to be set, if it's optional to be set, it should just be removed, right? Either figure that out or make it not optional, even if it's like a dumb small one, right? Just like always have it be there. I think that's like the thing, right? And for example, or remove it, and that's important. Like, for example, you could have a dev with what I was thinking initially is like, I'll have dev env file, and I'll have a dev mode environment variable that'll allow it to pick up the other logging config or whatever. And I'm like, you know, you know, it might just be and like, it might be that if I continued on with that logic, I'll have like a prod flag, because I was in my head imagining dev mode to be similarly an optional flag, like with dev env file, where it's like, if it exists it does it, if it doesn't exist it just moves on with its life, rather than just exiting the program like I did with the logging level env. What was I saying? So essentially, if you continue down that line of thinking, and then eventually someone else adds a prod mode environment variable, and it's like, okay, dev mode is not essential, but prod mode is, or some sort of prod related variable, right? Well, you could just remove dev mode altogether and look for the absence of prod mode, right? So that's what I mean. Like, both are viable answers uh, to the question of, if you're thinking about making an environment variable optional, either don't make it optional or remove it altogether, right? I'm being kind of opinionated. I was like, sorry for the malfunction. I was like trying to think, like, what am I exactly trying to say? And this is what I'm trying to say, is it really drive home this point, because otherwise, just as things scale, code, you just write more code, write more stuff. It's eventually going to grow, and it will eventually become technical debt, because everything you write is eventually technical debt. This hardline way of thinking will make it easier. That's how I feel. And maybe I'm going a little too hardcore for something that is at this point in time a personal project, but I'm hoping that doesn't remain the case forever. Anywho, it's moving on. No, not moving on. So thinking about all of that is why I was like, okay, let me just make sure I read all the environment variables right at the top before they're ever needed. And at the same time, any type of typecasting or validating of the variables, I will also do. And doesn't matter what the variable is, if all of them aren't there, we're just gonna sysexit one. Now, I did mention system exit one earlier, but I just do want to talk about it because a neat thing with most deployment platforms is that you can add a trigger based on the exit status code. So when you do sysexit one, it actually exits with that status code, um, as compared to like just exit or quit, which I don't think you can give it the status code. That's like from exiting from within the REPL. And then there's os dot underscore exit. Dot underscore exit. Yeah, that one. Which I think, yeah, you can give it the status as well. And the reason you rather not do that is because system.exit allows for some on destruct or on end of script stuff to run if you have it defined, which you should, unless you're using a framework like this, which already does have some defined on its end, and you can do other things, like for example with the where is it, the async context manager that I had set up earlier, this one, you could have some exit stuff there. So to just make sure everything runs, you want to use sys exit, unless there's for some reason you need to critically exit, like right now, I don't know, it's like malicious attacker about to get to database needs to exit. I don't know. I don't know what the situation is, but if you do os dot underscore exit, it just kills the program right away. No shutdown procedures are called. So yeah, in env vars parsing mechanism ensure messaging actual issue to user. Yeah, okay, so continuing on with the same environment variables discussion, I also decided that when doing this, say adding this mechanism, you need to make sure that like I issue a useful message, right? In the sense that I'm just gonna double check my recording is working well. Is this in voice isolation mode? No, okay, it's in standard mode. Nice. Is that just got completely distracted. Is that like, okay, so if it's crashed out because an environment variable is not set, make sure it mentions the environment variable is not set, and make sure it mentions all of the environment variables that are not set in one go. And if an environment variable is set and it messes up due to some sort of validation or something like that, then also just like toss the exception right away and just shut down. Just shut down right away, right? Because it's best to catch these at startup rather than like in the middle of like a giant script running or some API that is live or whatever. If it's in the middle of that and then it crashes because like the proper validation didn't happen earlier on before half the work is done, that's going to be much worse. So yeah. To do setup logging filter for application startup and shutdown from Uvicorn. I had mentioned this in the last video, and yeah, I think this one is just going to remain in the to-do for a while, because while I do want to work with logging filters, it's pretty simple, and I highly doubt it's going to be very difficult to implement later on when it's more necessary. So for right now, I'm probably just going to remove the logs from the startup shutdown, like from the async context manager, and just let the UVcorn logs fly. Like, I don't care. Um, you know, that's just how it's going to be. At least for now. Maybe later on I'll come back to it when it's more important, and then I'll probably get it to remove the additional startup shutdown thing. Actually, yeah, I think I'm just going to leave the logs in the async context manager, and also at the same time not set up the filter right now, and then later on when there's an actual need to start up the filter, uh, that's when I'll do it. Because here's the thing, if I do it now, it's just for this very arbitrary thing that just doesn't matter, and it's just like time. So why? So this comment we'll get back into in a moment, as well as the changes to JSON formatter. All of this is stuff from black formatter. Yeah, all of this. Yeah, okay, so this other thing is very simple. I just wanted to see what would happen if I just do this, and here, I'll just show you what happens. Okay. I'm just gonna do that. Oh, so I finished adding colors, by the way. We're gonna get into how I did that in a moment. Kaboom. So you can see this had a 500 internal server error, exception in ASCII application. This was raised by UVcorn error. So UVcorn handles these kinds of exceptions. And yeah, it's rare for an application to actually go down. Like lots of things are handled by UVcorn directly, which is nice. Which is why you need to be careful about catching things. I'm gonna add another to-do. I just realized there's another to-do. I think I might have already added it. Okay, I did already add it. So yeah, okay, getting into this, I'm just gonna go through all the remaining to-dos. Let me just check my to-do tree. The set up logging filter fab, that's when we already talked about. I'm just gonna go through all the to-dos. Add mechanism to disable color. So I mean, I have been talking about adding colors. I have, as you already saw, I got kind of already spoiled it. I already added colors. Add colors for levels. I gotta remove that and update all of this and commit it, which I'll do in a moment because I'm gonna remove some extra nonsense and then remove this and then I'll commit it. Update the exception formatting, which is what the thing I was about to come out. I'm like, wait, I'm pretty sure I already had it. Yeah, so here, just regarding the environment variable mechanism, I talked about, oh my God. Ugh. My door started writing in a very uncomfortable way. I'll try and bake that moment into the title of the video. But yeah, I need to remove this try except and just make this block simpler. That might never get done because this whole thing might just get chucked into the bin. We'll see. So, coming back to the magic, and I'm actually gonna pause before I get into the magic because I want to get a Diet Coke. All right, getting back to the recording. So let's get into the magic sauce over here. So essentially what I did was what I wanted to do was add some colors, right? So each one of these escape sequences represent a different color, except for reset, which essentially is an escape sequence that tells the terminal that in the previous log, ignore or reset whatever the terminal color is to the previous color, whatever the previous, whatever the default color is for that terminal session, right? So that's what this this last escape character reset is and what the others were. And before I get into the implementation, I do want to describe the problem I was having, is because I wanted it, and this is probably a little unnecessary, but I still wanted it to be able to take any arbitrary logging level and still have it be functional and still be able to assign a color rather than locking everyone into debug info, warning, error, and critical. Be like some sort of super critical or something like that, or you could reserve specific levels for like some sort of potential leak or something like that. I don't know, whatever. You could just use different levels for different reasons, whatever you need, right? in case these don't suffice. And so I was like, okay, how do I do this? And I went to ChatGPT, and it gave me a bonkers thing, but it gave me a piece of what I needed, which is bisect, right? So what is bisect? First, before I get into that, I want to talk about how bonkers ChatGPT went. And it's ridiculous. I thought about the answer too. This was just fucking horrible. I'm gonna show, yeah, here. Change info color. I think it's in this one only. Yeah. So the approach was, first I tried to get it to not give me the code. I just wanted to think about it. In format software, find the bucket via, okay, up till here it was fine. And then keep a small cache dict of bucket index to formatter so you don't construct a new formatter every call. I'm like, what? Why would you create a new formatter every call? Right? So it basically does some weird nonsense where it's like get formatter, and I'm like, what do you mean by get formatter? The class is already inheriting, and you are the formatter. The formatter doesn't create another formatter, it just formats it. So it's trying to, like, I'm like, what the hell is this nonsense? Optional nicety, I don't know. This was just super confusing. I was just like, what in the absolute hell are you talking about, ChatGPT? But this part, I'm like, okay, if I wanted to look up what bisect was, and so I got into that. Array bisection algorithm. This module provides support for maintaining a list in sorted order without having to sort the list after each insertion. For long lists of items with expensive comparison operations, this can be an improvement over linear searches or frequent resorting. This module is called bisect because it uses a basic bisection algorithm to do its work. Unlike other bisection tools that search for a specific value, the functions in this module are designed to locate an insertion point. Accordingly, the function never calls an EQ method, aka is equal method. Instead, only you're relying on LT or less than methods. The functions module are not thread safe if multiple threads concurrently use bisect function on the same sequence. This may result in undefined behavior. Likewise, if the provided sequence is mutated by a different thread while bisect function is operating on it, the result is undefined. For example, using insort left. That's not something that's going to be a problem for us because we're essentially always going to be bisecting this, and we'll get to that. So what is the bisection algorithm? Let's actually go into that, and then I'll showcase it to you, and I'm going to do something that I actually created a small task for myself on Trello to do it. So, and I'll do it live with you guys on this video. This video is going to get beefy. I'm going to drink my Diet Coke. Oh, it just took me back here. What is bisection algorithm? I bet it's some sort of tree. An interval halving method, binary search method, or is a numerical technique used to find the root of a continuous function within a given interval. Operates on the principle of the intermediate. Start with a continuous and an interval a, b such that f of a and f of b have opposite. Define a tolerance level for the desired accuracy and a maximum number of iterations to prevent infinite loops. Iteration, calculate the midpoint of the current interval. Evaluate the function at the midpoint. Root found. If f of c equals 0 or the interval with b minus a over 2 is less than tolerance, then c is considered the root or a sufficiently close approximation, and the process terminates. I don't think this is correct. Computing? Oh, just give me the same thing again. Is this? I'm. Maybe that's actually literally what it uses. Where's my Python? go. This can be an improvement over linear searches or frequent restoring. The module is called bisect because it uses a basic bisection algorithm to do its work. Like other bisection tools that search for a specific value, the functions in the module are designed to locate. What algorithm does bisect Python use? Yeah, so it's just a binary search. It's larger than search, continues to the right half. This process continues until the target value is found or the search interval becomes empty. Okay, fine. Like that's what I thought. I was like, what is the bisect method? I mean, it's kind of interesting. I mean, I kind of want to know what the bisection algorithm is and all that jazz. And maybe that's where binary search got its inspiration, but that's not exactly. This is about continuous functions and stuff. It's not the same. Anyway, so it just does a binary search to get the correct answer a little quicker. And honestly, we could have done a linear search. The thing is, like, if this thing scales to like enough requests, the small performance gain for logging might be worth it, because logging is essentially not, it is one of the most essential things in my opinion, because I think it's even more important than writing bug resistant code, because you're gonna have bugs. Right? Like, no matter how the best you do, you're probably gonna get bugs at some point. So yeah, bisect essentially just is actually searches and stuff by a binary search, and it improves performance a little bit. And because it takes, and honestly, like, I could have done list find or something like that. I forget what it is. Find value in list, something like that. Or we could have a dict if I didn't need the flexibility of being able to hand in any level. And then the other thing I thought of was like, okay, I could essentially have like a giant case statement, case switch, or a switch statement. I don't know what they're called in Python. I know they were introduced a little while ago, like I think in 11, maybe 3.11, but I'm not sure. Could have been even 3.10. And or like doing some sort of like just giant if else. And I was like, is this faster? Could this be faster? Like, maybe it's faster. And I think it is. I think this would be faster than either of those, because in either of those you just kind of have to like check eventually, and it's the very and if it's the very last one, if it's a critical, it's just going to take longer. But then again, info is going to be the most common one. So actually the linear search might be better, right? Because 9 out of 10 logs are info, right? And if you got criticals coming out of your ass, the efficiency gains from this isn't going to be worth it, right? Like, because it really isn't going to matter if you're just getting so many criticals that the bisect algorithm is actually making a difference, because it's just like middle, no, left, right, no, and just finds its spot, right? And then Yeah. Yeah, that's time to add another to do, boys. Um, change. I'm not gonna change it right now because right now I'm not going back. I have colors. I need to move forward, but I'm adding the to do. Change colors implementation to switch. I think it's called a switch statement or if else instead of bisect. Okay, cool. And actually, I'm just gonna move this down because honestly, updating the exception formatting is way more important than fixing this right now. Because exception formatting can just makes it really difficult to read what's going on. Okay. Moving on. So that's what bisect does. And then there's bisect left and bisect right, which essentially says like, it's essentially about the edge case of you're actually inserting the actual values. So like if I'm actually inserting 10, if I do bisect left and I try to insert 10, I'm gonna get the thing on 10, but if it's bisect right, it'll actually go on to the next one, right? Because bisect essentially just returns the index. So what I'm going to do right now is create a playground file, and I'm just going to add it to my git ignore as well. Dev config files. Others, we're just going to call it others pg.py. That's what I'm going to call it. Create a new file here, pg.py. From bisect. So what am I doing right now? I'm essentially creating a file that's added it to get ignored. Why is it not being ignored? Oh, it's because there's an error. From bisect import bisect left and bisect right. And this is essentially a file that I'm just going to use for testing out code and stuff like that. And that's why I added it to my git ignored. That's why I added it to my git ignore, because I don't want to get this checked into like VCS, but it's just nice to have a file like that around that was like, if you start interacting with some code you don't understand or whatever, you can just copy and paste like pieces of it here, or look up things from the documentation, just play around with it here. And this is the thing I was saying that I created a task for, because when I was doing this myself, I kept just like, the server kept restarting and I kept trying to look for this little print statement here. I'm like, oh my god, that was getting really confusing. And then afterwards, like after I was done with everything, I realized like, I should have just made a separate file where I just did excuse me. This is gonna be the Homer Simpson episode. That's what I'm gonna call it. So anyways, so let's just start simple and just showcase what this is. I'm gonna use a tuple instead of the what's the word I'm looking for? I'm gonna use a tuple instead of using a what's the word I'm looking for? A list, just because like it's technically slightly more memory efficient. It doesn't matter because it's just playground, like I'm just showing you something super quick, but It's just in my brain. So temp equals 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Right? And then if I call bisect, let's just start with a right so it can showcase the behavior to you. And now just looking at this, return the index where to insert item X in list A. So A is of type support len and get item, support rich comparison at bisect right. I don't know what this type is, honestly. Can I? Oh, it's not even type annotated here. I don't even know where it's getting that rich, because it's giving me like a very nuanced thing here. A is supports len and get item, and X is supports rich comparison T at bisect right. I'm guessing this is just being inferred from somewhere. I don't know where this is coming from. And this docstring is... The docstring is right there. Right? This is the docstring. So the description is, but where's the other stuff? Is it defined within this class or something? Oh no, this is the top of the file. Okay. I'm just gonna close that. So whatever. It doesn't matter how it's getting that, but basically from the description you can infer that return the index where to insert item X in list A. So A is the list, the first parameter, and then the item is, let's say I want to insert 3.4, right? And we're just gonna print that. That's really all we're gonna do. And then here, I'm just gonna control C, UV run pg.py. And it's 3, we get 3. I'm just gonna clear this so we can keep doing this multiple times. So this essentially is like, says bisect right with 3.4, the point to insert this in is an index 3. So remember 0 index, so 0, 1, 2, 3. So basically where 4 is where we should insert 3.4, and then if you were actually trying to do some sort of shifting, you would like basically shift 4 further up and insert 3.4. Right? Pretty simple. And that's essentially what it is. Just basic binary search. And I know there's a list.find value or something like that that does the same thing. But once again, I just had to have the flexibility of having like any level, right? And that's why I went down this route. And now I'm thinking like I'm kind of an idiot. I should have just done a case statement. So print by, and honestly a case statement with info at the top, and then you do debug instead of doing less than equals 10 and then less than equals 20, right? Because then it'll always have to iterate to the second one. We know info is the first one, so we could say greater than equal or greater than 10 less than equals 20 info. Grab that first. Make that the first thing in the switch statement, because that's 9 times out of 10 that's going to be the first one, and then have all the others after that, right? And right after that would be debug, and then the rest. I'm just like still stuck on that. I'm like, oh man, this is a terrible implementation. Why have I done this? Other than curiosity and understanding and knowing another Python core tool that I can use. So print bisect right. So this essentially gives me the insertion point. And here's the difference between bisect right and bisect left. So if I run with bisect right and give it exactly 3, right, it's gonna still say 3. It's still gonna want me to insert here at 4 and push this forward. But if I do bisect left, boom, it's going to say 2, even though it's the same value. So it's going to say 0, 1, 2. It's telling you to insert here and then, you know, probably push up or push down, however you want to take care of that in code. Here it's just giving you the index, right? That's the only difference between bisect left and bisect right, is the index that it returns when you are hitting an exact match value. Okay. I'm thinking something super freaking tricky. What if is there some math operation that I could do for info so that it's always in the middle? I don't know, this is just not gonna work. Never mind. I could have, I don't know, there could be some sort of mathematical operation that could transform 10 through 50 in such a way so that info is always in the middle, and that's why bisect is more powerful. I don't fucking know. I don't know. That's just super weird. Okay, so that's what that does. It's essentially, and this works for all of them. So I'm just gonna show you 2.4, which should still give you the same value as 2, and then 3.4 will still give you 3. Yeah. Yeah, there you go, 3. I guess I don't know, there must have been like, maybe it was a split second before the autosave kicked in or something like that. Maybe I've just moved too fast. That doesn't make sense though. I feel like the autosave kicks in super quick, but I don't know. So now, so essentially just it's gonna find where to insert and just return that index, like, hey, you should insert here, right? This is the index, right? Or at least that's what it's technically supposed to be for. We're essentially going to use it for a retrieval task, wherein what we did was, instead of a tuple, we have a tuple of tuples, right? And we're just going to get them to reflect $40 and $50. Right. Basically, what I'm trying to accomplish over here is showcase the code, showcase the logic about how I built up the code that I'm about to show. Right. So I believe even with the nested tuple, that should not trigger an error. Oh, it does. Okay, it does trigger an error. Never mind. Oh, it doesn't trigger an error. It just has like a silent failure with 0. But if you try to say debug, let's just do that. See, now we're getting like some sort of bisect failures, because this is just weird nonsense, right? So I'm just gonna have all of these mimic the thing I want. Info warn error in critical. I'm just gonna go with crit. And I'm just gonna remove bisect right because I'm tired of the complaining. I'm just gonna use bisect left, because that's essentially the behavior I want, right? Because if it's, so for example, if it is 3, right? Oh, well, okay. Before I get into that, let me show you guys something else. We got key, which is essentially a function. So if you just look into this here, the return value is okay. X high and low and high are both ints or none. So low and high essentially is how you restrict the index to do the search in. So if you have like 100 items, you could say only check from 25 to 75 for whatever reason, right? And everything else goes to hell, no big deal. which makes sense because then like you could have the item in the middle. Like you could focus on just being like between this and 75 is where the ordering would be, and it captures most of between 25 and 75 actually has most of things. Most of the inserts will be here, right? And actually, I don't know what that. I'm just guessing. I don't know. There must be some logic as to where that's useful, but I don't know. And then there's key, which is not described here, but I'm gonna pull it out from here. So key specifies a key function of one argument that is used to extract a comparison key from each element in the array to support searching complex records. The key function is not applied to the X value. So what that means is that basically it's a function, right, that key takes. It takes a callable, essentially, to parse your weird structure and find how to actually get its value, right? And it's very specifically not a function for iterating over the whole thing, but one item in your structure, in your data structure, list, tuple, whatever, right? So essentially what it's saying is like, if I gave this function one item, it needs to return a value to me that has the dunder LT method essentially available, right? So integers, floats, all numbers have them, and then you can implement EQ and LT into your own custom whatever. But it needs to have that because that's how it does the comparison, right? So for me, that's very simple because given an item X, I'm just going to give it a lambda function. A lambda function, by the way, is an anonymous function, and they're essentially designed for super simple syntax and single use or very limited use in a script. Like if it's called only once or twice and it's like a super simple thing, you can just throw it in as a lambda function. So lambda X, so given one element of this, I just essentially want to return X0. That's it. Right? That's all I need to return, right? Because X0 is the first element in a tuple, in a two tuple, and that first element is an integer, which definitely has the LT method. It's definitely comparable, and then it'll use, okay, so for each tuple, I need to get the first item in that tuple by running this function. I'm going to just run this function on each item. Each item is a two tuple, and I will get back an integer, and that allows me to compare. It's like, oh, okay, where do I put things in, right? So I have done 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 because that's what the logging enums are. So let's just upgrade our thingy. So now at 30, it shows you index 2, so 0, 1, 2. It's getting the exact right thing. And then if you drop it to 29, it should still give you 2, right? Which is exactly what I want because 20 is an info. Anything between 10 and 20 is info. Anything 10 or less is debug. That's how I want to design it. Honestly, you could flip that if that is something you care about. And I think bisect right would be the right answer there. I'm not sure. Let's see. If I switch to bisect right, which I can't remove like an idiot. No, okay, no, that's not the answer there. It's specifically for the edge case of matching the value. So if you want that, I guess you do something else, whatever. But this is the design I wanted. It made complete sense to me, right? That it's less than is, if you go less than, it is the same as the current one unless you hit the last level, and then it's less than that and less than that. That just makes complete sense to me, except for crit, where it's everything less than that up till the last level and everything above that will be the same, right? Which makes sense. And maybe if you want, you can define additional colors, and maybe if that happens, I might just extend my JSON formatter class with some parameters that it can take and have it do something like that, but that's someday in the future. I'm not doing that right now. Just add another million to-dos, right? And so now it's essentially doing its job. It's getting me this index. Now, what do I do with that index? The thing is, if I have that index, I can go something like this. So I'm gonna wrap that like there, 10, and then I'm just gonna go 1, right? Because basically what I'm saying is get the index using bisect, get that index in temp, and then that will return a tuple, and in that tuple get me the second item. That's what 1 is, because it's a 0 indexed language, right? Python is a 0. So you can see, boom, 29 needs to be placed in this bucket. That would be the insertion point, and it returns 1, right? 29 is 1. That makes perfect sense to me. And if you want, you can make these arbitrarily different from like 25 or whatever, just to make it more sense to you. But this makes sense to me. This felt fine. That anything between 21 and 29 is a warn, and anything between 11 and 20 is an infill. Like, that just makes sense to me intuitively, right? So now it's doing its job, and it's returning this, right? Okay. So now that you have followed along and hopefully understood this, and maybe you haven't, and I would urge you to just like do this yourself and play around with this. But basically, taking that idea and just expanding that. So first I defined these escape sequences with colors, which I just looked them up. This one I did not do like my usual rabbit hole-y thing. I mean, I did try to like just Google what one meant. I Googled what the reset one meant, and then I picked up from that one, inferred what the others did, right? So I created this thing, which is, as you can see, a tuple of tuples, where it's logging debug gray, this blue, blah, 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 blah. And remember, oh, I want to get into why we do INF. That was one thing I forgot to describe. But before I get into that, remember that these are all enums. So under the hood, they're all literals. So you can see here as I'm hovering over debug, it's just a constant, the literal 10. It's just literally 10, you know? So that's totally fine. That makes perfect sense to me. So coming back to this, I'm just going to talk about another edge case here. So what if I do 50? What if I want to look at 50? Oops. That gives me crit, right? What about 49? Because remember, by my logic, 49... Oh, sorry. What if I give you 51? We have a problem, right? And remember, I have a level 100. So, to fix this problem, we essentially go INF over here, which you can import from the math module, from math import INF. So that's just infinite, basically. This is infinite. That's essentially what that means, right? And now if you do this, it's just always going to give crit, because infinite is infinite, right? 41 through 49 would get you, 41 through 50 would actually give you the correct value. But if you didn't have infinite, and if you went over 50, you're going to have a bad time, right? Because you're just going to have this error. So to fix that, we use math INF. So that's why I use infinite over here, right? And then essentially, I have these two functions, get colors and get color key function. And here in the actual string, I said self.getColor, which gets one of these strings, right? One of these escape strings, and then ends it with self.reset, which resets the color so that, you know, in the next formatting thing, it can get its own color, you know, in case it's a different color. That's why we have to add that at the end. and just add it as part of this f string that is returned, which is still wrapped in new line characters, right? And then I have get color and get string. So get color is like self dot colors mapping. It's literally this code. It's almost exactly the same as this code, right? Colors mapping, bisect left, self colors mapping. This is what colors mapping is, by the way. It's within this class, right? Level number, right, which is passed to it with record dot level number because we got the record here already. Key equals self dot get color key function, which returns this mapping 0, right? Now you're gonna tell me like, isn't this unnecessarily verbose? Couldn't you have done a lambda function here? And I could have, but the thing is, if I did a lambda function, and this is going to be called like hundreds of times, every time that lambda function, it's just going to spin up a new instance of that function. It's literally just going to create it, right? Instead of having a precompiled like, function's there, go hit that function, right? So lambda, remember, is defined for one-off or very few uses in code, and is also genuinely a one-liner or extremely simple piece of code. I don't think it can even take a list comprehension, honestly. I don't know about that. Or if it can do a list comprehension, I actually have no idea. Actually, I think probably it could do list comprehensions, right? And so that's the code, right? So that's exactly how I did it. Now, as we discussed, I have to change this implementation away from bisect. New colors implementation should use switch and have info as first case. There you go. I'm just gonna add that there because we discussed that and I'm like, okay, that's actually kind of an important thought. So yeah, that's essentially the code, and I mean, you guys have already seen the magic of it, so it's kind of lame, but let me, there you go. You can see my logs are colored as hail. I'm just gonna hit the root endpoint, and boom, you can see gray, blue, which actually looks super purpley, and I'm not gonna even try to change that because I actually love purple. It's literally my favorite color. Then there's yellow, red, and bold red. And it works for level 100 too. I added colors. Actually, that's going to be the name of the video, finally. After all this talking, we added colors, right? That's the end of the video. I'm not going to go into this anymore. I'm going to clean up this file a little bit and commit it. But yeah, that is everything. And then after that, I'm definitely going to do add drop. All right. Thank you, everyone. Hope you guys all have a great day. And I hope this was valuable for you. And I hope wherever you are in your journey, that you believe in yourself. I actually had this conversation with my wife earlier today. Believing in yourself is extremely important to everything. And obviously there's like, if you're into psychology at all, there's like that whole dark triad thing, and then like that's a whole different game. I'm not even getting into that. But I envision that most people watching this don't fall into that, and probably in some aspect of life, if there's any aspect of life like I can't do that, not I won't do that or I don't want to do that, right? That's different. If you don't want to do something, you just don't want to do it, right? And that's why you're bad at that, is because you don't want to do it, so you don't do it, so you suck at it. That's different. But saying you can't do something, or can't for you Americans, I know it's weird, I sound totally American, but I say can't the way the British do. It's a consequence of how I've been raised. But whenever you catch yourself doing that, whenever you catch yourself saying, I can't do that. And it's not just a synonym or a stand-in for saying won't or I don't want to. Um, in front of someone, you don't have the power to say that that you don't want to, and so you say you can't even though it's actually you don't want to. That's also different. But if you genuinely can't say to yourself you can't do something, and it's something you want to do, I really, through this medium, if you're actually watching this or whatever, whoever is watching this, I don't think anyone is, at least not today or anytime soon, but maybe someday in the future. But please believe in yourself. It's essential. It is literally essential for any venture, any project, anything. Literally anything. You have to. Right? And I mean, it's a confusing thing because, like, I'm super. I'm pretty much try. I wouldn't say I try to live a Buddhist life. Actually, that's completely untrue. But I do truly understand Siddhartha Gautam's teachings. I do believe them, and one of them is non-self. And so I'm telling you to believe in yourself, but actually I also believe that the self doesn't exist, because those are actually both true things. And if you want to get into that philosophical debate, it's very weird, right? Like, I genuinely believe, like, the deeper down, once your ego starts dissolving and you go deep down into the void, I do feel like you become more connected with the universe. So then when you say, then the conversation turns from believe in yourself to believe. Just believe. Because you yourself don't exist, but you do exist. You're a part of everything else. You're a tiny part of a giant organism. Doesn't mean you're not an essential part of it. So believe. Yeah. Or believe in yourself, however you want to say it. It's essential. It really is. Take care, everyone.